Now, I already made a video about the wave motion of our spine, how to induce this wave-like motion into our spine. I was also mentioning there's a second part of this, which is the spiraling motion. So the first wave-like motion happens on this plane only, and on this plane. Now the spiraling motion occurs on the horizontal plane, so this plane. This means it's slightly different. In essence, it's similar because it's still a fluid motion, meaning a rhythmical repetition of a certain pattern. The spiral just keeps on going. But in this case, we are not working in this plane or this plane, we are working in this plane. So how is this different than how we work with the spine in the wave-like motion? I will show you. In my previous video, I already talked about the cervical part, the thoracic part, and the lumbar part of our spine. In this video, I want to focus mainly on the junctions, meaning the parts where one part goes over into the other part. Now these junctions, you can't really fixate them, but you can make in your mind a boundary between these parts. So you have the cervical part and the thoracic part. Now where this border lies is where the 7th cervical vertebra goes to the 1st thoracic vertebra. This is called the cervical thoracic junction. This is one junction we are going to use in this spiral-like motion. Now there are 3 junctions in total, meaning that we have 2 more. The 12th vertebra of the thoracic part of our spine. This will go into the 1st vertebra of the lumbar spine, meaning the thoracic lumbar junction. Now we also have the 3rd one where the lumbar goes into our sacrum, and this is the lumbosacral junction. These 3 junctions we're going to use as a reference for inducing this spiral-like motion into our spine. So first, the cervical thoracic junction. How do we approach working with these junctions? Now with all these junctions, there is a principle, a fundament which we will use. In every junction, we will use or move one area and we will isolate a different area. So in the case of the cervical thoracic junction, we will move our cervical part of the spine and isolate the thoracic and lumbar part of the spine. Now, this is not a pure isolation, but it's a relative isolation because the spine will move anyway, but we try to fixate it as much as possible. And the more we fixate one part, the more attention and intention will go towards the other part, meaning the cervical part in this case. So how do we work with this practically? We have a head, and this head we will try to maintain on eye level. So normally when we see like, oh yeah, I'm gonna loosen up my spine, we see people doing this. It's not bad, but it's also not what we try to achieve now, because we want to work with this junction. If we do this, we have too much movement in the cervical spine itself, meaning less intention on this junction. What we're going to do is keep our eyes as level as possible. Like I said, it's going to move anyway, but the intention is to fixate these parts. So what we will do is we will move our neck to the right, or at least one side. This is one area of attention. Go back, we can go forward. And we keep our eyes level, so we don't look down, but we keep our eyes forward, and this will happen. Go back, go to the other side, try to keep your eyes level. You will feel a big stretch here. This is a good indication. Go back, and you can also turn to the back. So not looking up, but your head pushing towards the back. So this will happen. Now, if you have these under control, you have the 4 points. Now we will move from one point to the other point, meaning we go from one side to the front, to the other side, to the back, and to the first side. So you can see I try to maintain my eye level as possible, but like I said, this is a relative fixation. It's going to move in some capacity, but the intention is to try to maintain it as level as possible. Now, when you can go from side to side, it's time to glue these parts together, meaning you get a rotation or spiral in the cervico-thoracic junction. Now remember what I said about isolation and moving? Right now we are moving our cervical spine, isolating our thoracic spine and our lumbar spine. So our cervical spine is moving while our thoracic spine is fixated, meaning the motion will happen mainly in the cervical-thoracic junction. This is the first spiral. Now let's go one level down. We go to the thoracic lumbar junction, meaning where the thoracic part of our spine goes over into the lumbar part of our spine. Same principle applies here. We will move one part and isolate different parts. In this case, we will isolate our cervical thoracic junction and our lumbosacral junction, which means this stays still and this stays still, and this part will be moving relatively to these parts. How will this look like? Same principle applies. We have 4 points, a point in front, 2 points in the side, and 1 point in the back. We will focus on this part, meaning the part where our ribs meet each other here. As you can see, this part will move to the front, move to the side, move to the back, move to the side, and move to the front. And again, we will glue these together, meaning it will become one fluid-like motion. And we try to isolate our lumbosacral junction and our cervical-thoracic junction. Now, like I said, it's not like we can objectively fixate these points, but we try to relatively fixate them, and the more we fixate these, the more the intention will go towards the junction we are moving with. So with this we can also go the other side. And there we go, that's our second junction. Now we only have one junction left, that is the lumbosacral junction. How will we approach this junction? Now, same fundament. Isolation of this junction, the cervical thoracic junction. Isolation of the thoracic lumbar junction. And moving the lumbosacral junction. How will this look like? We will isolate this junction, isolate just this junction, so this part of our body won't move. Now only our pelvic area will move. It will look a lot like a rotation of the hips. When people warm up, they do this, right? This is also a spiral, but it's not really fixating and intentioning the movement on the lumbosacral junction. How will we approach this? We will try to keep our hips relatively fixated as well and only focus on the spinal area, the lumbosacral junction. Now what we will do is we will push our pelvic forward like this, forward, to the side, to the back, and to the side, and to the front. Now, of course, my hips will have to move according to the position of the pelvis, but try to fixate them yeah, it's the intention of the fixation which will increase the intention of movement in the part where we want it. So forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side, gluing them together, creating one spiral or rhythmical repetition of a certain pattern. So you can see this stays relatively fixated, this stays relatively fixated, and I am moving my pelvic area relatively to the other parts. Can go the other way around. Can go this way. Now, of course, not this, but fixation on spinal level. So this is how we induce the spiral fluid aspect into the spine with reference points of the cervical thoracic junction, thoracic lumbar junction, and the lumbosacral junction. Again, with these exercises, you can hear some clicking noises, cracking, popping. This is okay. This is, yeah, like I said in the previous video, this is parts of our body which are not capable of movement getting more and more capable of movement, meaning the joints will create some clicking noises. Like I already said in the previous video, film yourself doing this 1 minute per day and see where the parts of your body get stuck and see if you can work to move more in these areas. Film yourself during this process, only 1 minute per day. Don't make it too large in one time frame and then rest for several days. No, this is a skill component. This is a fluid character, which means we're greasing the groove of the movement and not necessarily strengthen it that much. So 1 minute per day is fine, but do it every single day. It's not much time, but it will give you a lot in return. So move well, morph well, and I'll see you in the next one.